Welcome to our deep dive, and today we are going deep into kindness, specifically Deep Kindness, a revolutionary guide for the way we think, talk, and act in kindness, a book by Kraft. We're going to be looking at his unique approach to kindness, and most importantly, how we can use that and apply these insights to our own lives.
Yeah, right out of the gate, Kraft challenges us to move beyond those surface-level acts of kindness.
Yeah.
Those sprinkles is what he calls them.
Yeah, those sprinkles. I love that.
He wants something much deeper, a real shift in how we think and talk, but ultimately act.
Okay, so what does he mean by deep kindness? How's it different from just being nice?
Well, Kraft believes that deep kindness is about cultivating certain qualities within ourselves: empathy, courage, resilience, and forgiveness. He wants us to move beyond those fleeting moments of good intentions and really develop a consistent, intentional way of being.
Yeah, what's really interesting is he uses a story right at the beginning of the book to kind of drive that point home.
Oh,
The story about Helga, the woman who was flying to see her dying father.
yes, that anecdote is really striking, isn't it? Imagine being mid-flight, finding out your father passed away, and then just being completely ignored by thousands of people at the airport.
Oh, it's heartbreaking.
Makes you question, how present are we, really?
Right, and how often are we maybe missing opportunities to show that deeper kindness in our own lives?
That's Kraft's point. He argues that we talk so much about kindness, but when it comes to really putting it into practice in a deep, meaningful way, we often fall short.
Okay, so how do we bridge that gap? Where do we even begin?
Well, I think one of the biggest obstacles, especially today, to deep kindness is the digital age itself. Kraft argues that the constant information overload from social media, from the internet, is actually eroding our empathy, making it harder to connect genuinely.
Yeah, and he backs that up with some pretty startling statistics in the book.
Yeah.
Like the study from the American Psychological Association, right? That today's students are experiencing higher levels of anxiety than psychiatric patients did in the 1950s.
Oh, wow.
And I was thinking about that, and it's like, how can we possibly be attuned to the needs of others when we're battling with our own anxiety? Like, our brains just don't have the space for it.
That's a great point. And Kraft argues that anxiety is directly linked to that decline in empathy.
Okay.
That the more we focus inward on our own problems, our own anxieties, the less we have that mental and emotional space to even understand, let alone share in the feelings of others.
Right, and it makes me think about social media because we're constantly scrolling through those curated picture-perfect versions of other people's lives.
Right.
And it just feeds into that anxiety, and that makes us more focused on ourselves.
Think about all the times you've been so engrossed in your phone that you just completely miss an opportunity to connect with someone right in front of you.
Oh my gosh, yes, constantly.
It's almost like that pang of guilt that we feel sometimes. It's the digital age chipping away at our capacity for deep kindness.
Oh yeah, I've definitely been there. It makes me wonder, is technology is it inherently at odds with deep kindness? Is it even possible to be connected online but still cultivate those qualities of empathy and connection in our real world interactions?
That's a great question, and it is something that Kraft does explore in depth in the book. He doesn't think technology is inherently bad, but we need to be mindful of how we use it and that impact it has on our ability to be present and connect.
Right. So it's not just technology, though.
No.
Kraft also talks about kind of a broader cultural shift that's been happening, for decades.
Yes, he highlights this fascinating idea, right? We've moved from a character culture to a personality culture.
Yeah.
100 years ago, if you read books on self-improvement, they were all about developing qualities like honor and humility and courage. Today, it's all about charm and charisma and popularity.
So like that emphasis has shifted from like being to appearing.
Yes.
So instead of asking ourselves, what kind of person do I want to be?
Yeah.
We're asking, how do I want to be perceived by others?
Exactly. And this has some pretty significant implications for how we think about kindness. You can be outgoing and charming, but are you making choices that actually reflect those deeper values?
Right. So that's what separates the sprinkles of kindness
Yes.
from the deep, the meaningful kind.
Exactly.
And I think he uses, to illustrate that point, this really provocative example,
Uh-huh.
comparing the personality assessments of MLK and Hitler, which at first glance seems kind of crazy,
Yeah.
but it does make you think.
On the surface, they might have scored similarly in terms of some of these outward personality traits, charisma, leadership qualities, but what ultimately differentiated them?
Right.
Their character, their values, those things that drove their actions and shaped their impact on the world.
So it's not just about being likable or charming. It's about who we are at our core.
It really is. And, he says personality is largely fixed by the time we're 7. But character, that's something we cultivate throughout our lives.
That's encouraging.
It is encouraging. He goes on to say that we make something like 35,000 choices every single day. Each of those has the potential to shape us into kinder, more compassionate human beings.
This brings up a really interesting point. We all kind of know that being kind is a good thing. We want to be kinder. But often there's this disconnect between what we know is right and what we actually do. Why is that?
It's like that age-old philosophical problem, acrasia. Why don't we do what we know is right? Especially when it comes to kindness. And Kraft digs into this, and he offers 3 main reasons for that disconnect.
He calls them lack of capability, lack of safety, and lack of resolve. Can we break those down?
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
So the first one, lack of capability. This could be not actually knowing how to express kindness, right? Or struggling with skills like empathy.
Yeah.
Say you have a hard time understanding or expressing your own emotions. You might find it really challenging to connect with the feelings of others.
Right, so then there's that lack of safety, and that's kind of all about fear, right?
Exactly.
The fear of being vulnerable, facing rejection, or putting ourselves out there, and then being ridiculed or hurt. I know I've felt that hesitation to reach out or just to be present with someone who's struggling, because of that fear.
It's so real, and I think that we've all experienced it. And then finally, that lack of resolve. This might be the most common, right? It's having the best intentions, but failing to follow through because we're tired or busy or just completely overwhelmed by our own problems. Think about all those times you wanted to reach out to a friend going through a tough time, but never actually picked up the phone.
This is getting a little too real. I can definitely relate to all of those. So how do we start to overcome those? Where do we go from here?
Recognizing those barriers is honestly a huge first step.
Okay.
And Kraft doesn't just leave us with the problem. He gives us tons of strategies for how to cultivate deep kindness, starting with something that we do every day, giving praise.
And it's so interesting how he uses that example of the student who complimented him after the speech by simply saying, "You did good."
Right.
Which, on the surface level is like, okay, that's nice. But it really lacks depth, right? It lacks sincerity.
It does. It's that sprinkle moment. He wants us to move beyond the generic phrases like good job or way to go and give praise that is so specific and genuine and heartfelt.
Right. So instead of just saying, great job, I might say, I was really impressed by the way you handled that situation. Your patience and your communication really made a difference.
Exactly.
And so it's about noticing and acknowledging those specific things that made someone special, made them unique.
Exactly. Make them feel seen, make them feel understood.
See me.
And it's a skill. It's something that we can all develop with practice. I mean, think about someone that you want to offer a compliment to.
Yeah.
What specific quality or action do you want to acknowledge? How could you phrase it in a way that really makes them feel truly appreciated?
Yeah. This makes me think about all the missed opportunities I've had to give those deeper compliments. But it's interesting because Kraft argues that specific praise isn't just about making other people feel good.
Right.
It's a gateway to developing deeper kindness within ourselves.
Yes, I love that point. By actively looking for the good in other people and putting words to that appreciation, we're training our own minds to be more empathetic, to be more compassionate. It's like building those deep kindness muscles with every sincere compliment we give.
I love that. So we talked about giving specific praise, but he also talks a lot about understanding the root of people's behavior, both our own and others.
Right. And he draws on the work of child psychologist Ross Greene, who very famously said that kids do well if they can.
Right.
Such a simple but profound statement.
It is.
And I think it applies to all of us.
It does. And Greene suggests that when people are struggling, it's usually not because they're trying to be difficult. It's because they don't have the skills to handle a situation, or they have these unsolved problems that they just don't know how to deal with. And that really resonates with me. I mean, it's just a good reminder to approach those challenging interactions with more empathy and understanding.
Right. Instead of judging someone's behavior, pause and ask yourself, what might be going on beneath the surface? What skills might this person be lacking? Or what unsolved problems might they be facing?
It's about cultivating that more nuanced and compassionate perspective, which is really the foundation of deep kindness.
And speaking of compassion, Kraft's very open about his own struggles, too. He shares that story about feeling like a speaking robot, disconnected from his emotions after years of focusing so much on outward kindness.
That seems so counterintuitive. How could someone who's dedicated their life to kindness end up feeling so burnt out and emotionally detached?
It's a common trap. We focus so much on being there for everyone else that we completely neglect our own needs, our own emotions.
Oh, it's like pouring from an empty cup.
Exactly, and Kraft's experience really highlights how important self-care is. Understanding our own emotions if we want to practice deep kindness sustainably.
So it's not selfish to prioritize our own well-being.
Absolutely not. It's essential. He says if we neglect our own needs, we risk burnout, resentment, even compassion fatigue.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing that we want because that prevents us from truly giving to other people. He's not saying that we should neglect our responsibilities, but we can't give what we don't have.
Right.
So to offer deep kindness, truly, we have to start by taking care of ourselves.
That makes sense. And in line with that, he talks a lot about understanding our own triggers and emotional patterns, right?
He does. He says we need to become aware of those situations that bring up these really strong emotional reactions in us. By understanding our triggers, we can develop better ways to cope and avoid reacting, in a way that could ultimately harm us or harm other people.
It's about that difference between reacting and responding. And he uses that analogy of a courtroom. So when we're reacting, it's like we're the defendant. We're impulsively defending ourselves.
Yeah.
But when we respond, we're the judge. We're considering all sides and we're making a more informed decision.
I love that visual. And it takes practice, a conscious effort. We have to develop that ability to look at our thoughts and feelings objectively and then choose our actions wisely, even in the face of these challenges.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we move from that reactive state to a more responsive way of being?
He actually gives us some specific strategies for doing that. First, there's mindfulness, paying attention to our thoughts and feelings in the moment without judgment. Then there's cognitive reframing, challenging those negative thoughts and interpretations that usually lead to our reactive responses.
So it's about finding those more balanced and realistic perspectives. So instead of catastrophizing, we can pause and ask ourselves, is this thought really true? Is there another way to look at this? What's the most helpful way to respond?
Exactly. And it's a process. It's not about reaching some kind of perfect emotional state. It's just that continual work of trying to be more conscious and intentional.
And he talks about how it's important to understand the nuances of our different emotions. And he actually encourages us to do a little research on different emotional terms, because it's not enough to just say, I'm feeling good or I'm feeling bad. We need a richer emotional vocabulary.
Yes.
So why is that so important?
If we can accurately name our emotions, then we can better understand what we're experiencing.
Okay.
Then we can communicate our needs more effectively.
Okay.
It's about being more in tune with our own emotional world, and that actually helps us to have more empathy and compassion for other people. We start to see that we all go through these different emotions, and they're all valid, even the ones that are uncomfortable.
This really resonates with me. It's not about pretending to be happy all the time. It's about acknowledging all of our experiences, even the difficult ones.
Exactly.
And that actually brings us to another important aspect of deep kindness that Kraft talks about: forgiveness.
Yes, forgiveness. And he dedicates a whole chapter to this, exploring the power of forgiveness towards others, but more importantly, I think, towards ourselves.
And to really illustrate that point, he gets really vulnerable and shares his own experience with healing and growth after going through a divorce.
Yeah.
And he talks about how holding on to resentment and blame only prolonged his pain.
Right. And he's very clear that forgiveness doesn't mean condoning those actions, or forgetting the past.
Right.
It's about letting go of that anger, that bitterness, and making a choice to move forward with compassion and understanding. And he quotes Brian Stevenson, the human rights lawyer, who said that each of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done. Such a good reminder that we're all capable of making mistakes, and those mistakes don't define who we are or what we're capable of.
I love that. So this act of forgiveness, that is one of the most profound expressions of deep kindness that we can offer.
It really is.
And it's hard. It makes me think about all the times I've struggled to forgive, both myself and others. And it's a process, right?
It absolutely is. It's not easy, but Kraft offers some really good tips. Trying to see it from the other person's perspective, realizing that they're human too, they make mistakes, focusing on being present and letting go of that need to control things that happened in the past.
Those are good tips. But he also acknowledges that there are times when forgiveness might not be possible or safe.
Right.
Especially when it involves ongoing harm or abuse.
And in those situations, he encourages us to seek professional help, to get the support that we need to heal from that trauma.
Right. It's a reminder that deep kindness should never come at the expense of our own safety or well-being.
It shouldn't. And that leads us to another really important aspect of deep kindness. Setting healthy boundaries.
Boundaries, yeah. So it's not about being a doormat.
Exactly. You can be kind and compassionate without tolerating harmful or disrespectful behavior. And it involves knowing our limits, communicating those limits assertively but kindly.
And he even have a whole chapter dedicated to those uncomfortable situations where we feel pressured to be kind.
Yeah.
Even when it goes against our intuition or our values. I'm thinking about that section where he talks about emotional blackmail.
Yes.
Where people try to manipulate us into doing what they want by making us feel guilty or obligated.
Yeah.
Such a common tactic. But Kraft offers some really good ways to deal with those situations.
Yeah, he offers strategies to respond to those things in a way that honors our own values and needs, but still allows us to be respectful and compassionate to the other person.
Yeah, so we can be kind without compromising our own well-being.
Right.
I love that. It's not about being a pushover. It's about standing up for ourselves and what we believe in, but still treating others with dignity. He also challenges us to look at our own perfectionism. Right.
Yes, and those unrealistic expectations we put on ourselves and on other people that can lead to self-criticism, anxiety, and that fear of failure.
Yes.
He says we have to embrace those imperfections, realize that making mistakes is a part of being human.
It's part of the process.
And to focus on the progress, not on achieving perfection. It's a really good message because we live in a culture that often measures our worth by how much we achieve.
Right. It's a good reminder to be gentle with ourselves and to celebrate our effort.
It is.
And acknowledge that growth is a journey, not a destination. And this leads so beautifully to this idea of self-compassion.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, he encourages us to treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a close friend.
Yeah, it's about silencing that inner critic that's constantly putting us down and talking to ourselves with those words of encouragement.
And he says self-compassion can actually make us more resilient.
Absolutely.
And more capable of showing kindness to others.
It makes sense. When we're not fighting that battle within ourselves, we have more energy and capacity to offer that compassion to others.
Right. And he also talks about the importance of recognizing the good in ourselves and in other people. He's a big advocate for gratitude, right?
He is. He suggests keeping a gratitude journal or writing thank you notes, just taking time each day to reflect on what you're grateful for.
It's about shifting our focus from what's wrong to what's right.
Right.
And, research shows that gratitude can have such a huge impact on our well-being.
It does.
It's amazing. People who practice gratitude regularly are happier and healthier and just more resilient overall.
It makes sense. When you're looking for the positive, you feel more content, you're more at peace, and that just naturally kind of flows into your interactions with other people.
Totally. And Kraft even talks about celebrating the successes of others.
Yes.
Genuinely being happy for them when they achieve their goals. It's about understanding that their success doesn't diminish our own worth.
Yes.
And that's challenging, especially when we live in such a comparison-driven world.
It is. He calls that compassionate joy, the ability to take delight in the happiness and well-being of others.
I love that compassionate joy. It's beautiful. It's like, we can all thrive and flourish in a world where kindness and compassion prevail.
Absolutely.
I love that he challenges those conventional ideas about success and happiness.
Me too. And that leads us to one of the most powerful things that Kraft talks about, service.
Okay, service. How does he connect that with deep kindness?
He says that true kindness, real kindness, goes beyond those individual acts of generosity.
Okay.
It's about contributing to something that's bigger than ourselves, making a positive impact on our communities and the world.
So deep kindness is about action.
It is. He challenges us to step outside our comfort zones and embrace that discomfort and get involved in meaningful service. It's not about getting recognition or accolades.
Right.
It's about showing up, being present, and giving our time, our talents, and our resources to causes that we believe in.
And I love that he emphasizes finding those opportunities that resonate with our passions. Like volunteer at a local organization or donate to a cause you care about. Just find small ways to make a difference.
Right. Even just reaching out to someone who's struggling and offering practical help, like cooking them a meal or running errands for them.
Yeah.
Just being a listening ear. It's a reminder that even those small acts of service can create a huge ripple effect that can make a big difference.
Absolutely. It's such a good reminder that we all have the power to make a difference.
And that brings us to the last concept Kraft explores in the book, this idea of being the question.
Being the question. What does he mean by that?
He tells a story about listening to a Holocaust survivor talk about her experiences, and he realized he'd spent so much time trying to convince people to be kind,
Yeah.
focusing on that why of kindness. But after hearing this woman's testimony, he had a profound realization.
What was it?
It wasn't why should we be kind? The real question was, what is preventing us from being kind?
Wow, that changes everything.
It does. Instead of these abstract concepts or moral arguments, he's asking us to look inward
Okay.
at our own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, the things that might be holding us back from being kind.
Right. So it's about moving beyond those platitudes and slogans and really getting to the heart of what's stopping us from living our value.
Exactly. And that kind of self-reflection can be hard, but it's so important for growth.
And I love that he quotes G.K. Chesterton, who said, "The answer to the question, what is wrong, is always, I am wrong."
It's such a good quote.
And that's a powerful statement because it challenges us to take responsibility. We always want to blame other people or outside factors for problems, but Kraft wants us to own our part in creating a more compassionate world.
Yeah, it's about asking ourselves those hard questions. What am I contributing to the problem? What am I doing or not doing? What blind spots do I need to address?
It's about being the change, starting with ourselves.
Exactly. Not waiting for other people to change, but taking responsibility for our own thoughts, feelings, and actions.
And that brings us to the core message Kraft leaves us with.
Yeah.
Deep kindness is not a destination, it's a journey.
It's this ongoing process of self-discovery and growth and making a conscious choice to act.
It takes courage,
Vulnerability,
resilience.
and that willingness to embrace all of the messiness of being human.
Yeah, showing up even when it's hard,
Even when we feel inadequate.
even when we make mistakes.
It's about choosing kindness over and over again in our thoughts, in our words, and in our actions.
And it's believing that together we can make a difference.
We can.
So we've talked about all these amazing concepts and ideas, but how do we keep that momentum going? How do we actually turn those good intentions into a lasting practice?
Well, Kraft makes a really good point about this. He says real transformative kindness often involves a certain level of discomfort.
Right.
We live in this world where everything's about being comfortable and convenient, but real growth rarely happens in our comfort zones.
It's so true.
Yeah.
And he uses that analogy of physical exercise, right?
Yeah.
If you want to build muscle, you got to push yourself. You got to feel a little bit of that discomfort.
It's the same with deep kindness. You gotta stretch yourself. Take risks. Be vulnerable. Step outside those routines and do things that might feel a little awkward at first.
He talks about that fear of looking foolish.
Oh, yeah.
And he actually encourages us to kind of embrace those moments, laugh at ourselves. Remember that everyone makes mistakes.
It's about letting go of that need for everything to be perfect and just focusing on the intention behind what we're doing. Remembering that deep kindness is a practice, not a performance.
It's not about getting it right all the time.
Right, exactly.
And I love how he challenges us to really be creative in how we express deep kindness. It's not about following some set of rules. It's about finding those unique, meaningful ways to connect with others. Really make a difference.
He wants us to be playful and experiment. Really think outside the box. What brings you joy when you're expressing kindness? What gifts and talents do you have that you can share with the world? That's what he wants us to think about.
But he also talks about the importance of consistency, right?
Yes.
It's not about those big, grand gestures we do once a year.
Yeah.
It's about those little everyday things.
Absolutely, making it a part of your daily life.
Right. So like setting those small, achievable goals, right?
Yes.
Like offer a genuine compliment to someone. Express gratitude. Just really listen to someone with an open heart.
Absolutely. It's those seemingly insignificant actions that, when you do them regularly, can have a huge impact. There can create that ripple effect of kindness that spreads outward.
I love that. So as we wrap up our deep dive into deep kindness, I want to leave you with this final question to think about.
Okay.
What's one small but meaningful act of deep kindness that you can commit to this week? Could be writing a note to someone, offering help to a neighbor, or donating to a cause you care about. It doesn't have to be huge. It's just about taking that first step.
Taking that first step and letting it inspire you to keep going. It's about believing that each act of deep kindness matters.
Yeah, it really does.
It contributes to building a more compassionate world.
So thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into deep kindness.
Yes, thank you.
We hope that this exploration has inspired you to be a little bit kinder, a little more compassionate.
And a little more courageous.
Yes, absolutely. Until next time.
Keep diving deep.